Hello, welcome or welcome back to Sapling Tarot. My name is Imogen. Today we're going to be talking about what I've been reading for the last 3 months. I'm going to start off with non-fiction, tarot, witchcraft, etc. And then I will go on to fiction. I'll work in kind of chronological order, or do the best I can. And yeah, let's jump straight in. So you may remember this from last quarter. I pre-ordered this and it arrived in time for the last time I did one of these videos. This is Red Tarot, a decolonial guide to divinatory literacy by Christopher Marmolejo. They have a Substack, which I really recommend. Is it a Substack? Or, you know, like a website or stuff, which I only recently found. It's so good. It's ridiculous book that I'm so glad exists. I've just been kind of dipping in and out of it because I think to read it cover to cover would be like an intense time. But yeah, so I've just been doing some readings with like, I don't know, various questions or whatever, or just like doing a card pull and then seeing what comes up. I've got some like tabs and stuff in it. I cannot recommend this highly enough. This and Post-Colonial Astrology by Alice Sparkly Cat are just like my two, and Radical Tarot by Charlie Claire Burgess are... Oh no, I'm just going to start listing books now because I feel terrible about like missing people. But yeah, anyway, it's a bloody good book. I don't need to start making like qualifying like it's the best blah blah blah. There are other great books out there obviously, but like this is really good stuff. I've been considering getting it on ebook as well, just because that's like what I read most often, but I think having the physical book is the way forward for me with this kind of like reference thing, for like having bookmarks and tabs and stuff. So yeah, so that's a continuation from last time. I'm also still like kind of plodding my way through No Bad Parts, if you remember that from last time. But yeah, this is just one that I wanted to bring up again because what a banger, quite frankly. Then I was working with the Herb Crafters, wow, tarot for, oh, my brain's just fully fucked off, I'm so sorry, the tourist season in April and stuff. So I was working with this. I did herbalism for PTSD and trauma and stuff course by the same writer last year. Well, it's a self-paced course, so it's not like I've finished it. I still have all the resources and it's bloody brilliant, but this is just fab. It's just like a really practical, I mean, it's a chunky book, but it's just a really useful, like, I don't know if you could have like edited it further. I haven't read like all of it, but like a lot of it's in, I don't know if you can see, there's like, so it's sort of like a materia medica type thing, but then there's also like question and answer things and stuff about trauma, and it's a really good, it's like there's recipes, there's information, there's just all sorts of stuff. It's like everything that I could have like hoped for in this like little rose-covered tome. It's brilliant. Then I read Cartomancy and Folklore because I was doing by Roger J. Horn, which is kind of a classic at this point. I know lots of people are reading it or have read it, and people do it for like book clubs and stuff, and I was really pleased to actually get around to reading it because sometimes I can be terrible about books like that. I'm just really grateful that that exists. It's quite a short book, but it packs a punch in terms of it's very clear and readable, and I found it quite validating, I suppose, that a lot of the stuff that's in it was stuff that I not just that I agree with, but it's like ways that my brain works in terms of ways of reading things and ways of thinking about stuff. So maybe that's why I think it's a good book, was because it was like confirmation bias. But regardless, I thought it was really great. It was good for doing like my sort of like baby Marseille study stuff, and oh yeah, I started like reading with playing cards, and that was super fun and a good thing to kind of have under my belt, and has like helped with my numerology knowledge. And yeah, it was super interesting to see like different perspectives throughout history and like different folk traditions that are mentioned about what different cards mean. That's really cool, because I've been looking at patella decks as well, so you know, obviously a very different thing, but just like in terms of I think I used to just be like really overwhelmed by the idea of there being different cartomantic traditions, and now it just feels all kind of like yummy and delicious to like learn a little bit about different things. So speaking of, we've got Tarot on Earth by Tom Benjamin, the exoteric tarot man himself. I haven't read as much of this book as I would have liked to yet, because I was mostly reading the cartomancy and folklore one, but what I've read of it so far has been brilliant. And again, this kind of like slightly almost like confirmation biasy kind of way. It's like massive print, so it's not actually as intimidating as you might think to look at it. My one smells like the not particularly great secondhand book smell. So I'm a little bit loath to just kind of sit here and flick through it, but it's been really useful so far. Other non-fiction, well, I mean, is folklore non-fiction? I mean, it's like somewhere in between, isn't it? I picked this up at the Leith Witchcraft Market from, I want to say, Argonaut Books. And then, because of this, went on to follow Icy Cedric on Threads, which has been a real treat. This is great. It's like, it's quite interesting because it's sort of not even so much the stories, but like the history of the stories. And it's, yeah, I suppose it's like slightly an assumption that you know the stories, but it's really cool. I love folklore, I love fairy tales, I love the kind of stories that we pass down, particularly to children. But I grew up with particularly Irish folklore. But yeah, so it's like more about the characters than like telling you the stories of them. And it's kind of turning a lot of them on their head. And yes, my friend. It's the Selkies. I love the Selkies. That was like a really like fundamental story for me as a child. But yeah, so that's Rebel Folklore by Icy Cedric, illustrated by Melissa Jaram, forwards by Natasha Ballin and Amy Jeffs. Amy Jeffs, I got one of her books for my birthday, and so you'll probably see that in 3 months' time. But yeah, empowering tales of spirits, witches and other misfits from Anansi to Baba Yaga. And I think that this is going to really improve my tarot practice, because I use a folklore deck for my professional readings. So if I can like have some extra context for these people, then that's very exciting. And then yeah, just like another sort of like wildcard non-fiction book. It's another pre-order. Wow, is this a great book? I almost don't know what to say because I don't know if you are particularly interested in food. I am. It's like a big, that's all my tabs. You see those in the top corner? I am, but then I tend not to have an awful lot of success with recipe books because I'm a low energy creature. I don't have a lot of scope for faff or kind of lengthy preparations and stuff, it's like I've not got a lot of energy, I've not got a lot of executive function in that way, in terms of like planning and sequencing how one would go about doing these sorts of things. This book is amazing because there are some really like intricate looking or like fascinating sounding dishes, and they're just not, you know, like they're tiny little methods and like not even massive ingredients lists, and they're not ingredients that like I would struggle to get a hold of even in my sort of like rural West Scotland town. And it's just like, it's just really exciting to have a book of food that I know that I love, but that I could actually maybe prepare at home. And it's like, it's such a rich foodie tradition, and it combines so many different cultures, and it's just really cool. It's like I've grown up around like particularly Iranian food, and like a lot of my family has lived in the Middle East at various different points, but Palestinian food just seems to be like this like perfect mix of so many of the different sorts of food that I love, and like flavour profiles and ingredients that I can eat as well, which is because I've like developed sort of like, I don't know, an intolerance and stuff to like onions and garlic and peppers, which are just in everything. And there was a surprising amount of things in here that like don't have any of those things, because there's like herbs and spices and stuff. Yeah, I really want to make this. Look at it. But yeah, a little bit of a rogue one for a tarot channel, but I just, I know that some of you are like foodie people, and I really recommend it. I think Nigella even posted one of the recipes on her Instagram, which was a kind of a courgette-y, ricey something. I think I might have tabbed it. Oh, no, maybe not. But yeah, just amazing stuff, beautiful photography, both of like the food but also of scenery and the people that grow the particular things, or yeah, just really, really brilliant, like surprisingly accessible. I mean, I would have like just enjoyed it as an art book or something, but it's yeah, I'm really excited to jump into those recipes. Right, fiction. I can't remember how much I read last time. I feel like I've read less this time, but I have enjoyed, I think, most of the books that I've read this quarter. And it's kind of funny, like I was doing like star ratings on them, but then I've realised that like generally speaking I don't go much lower than like a 3.5, and even that's quite rare, but it's because I sort of know what I like at this point. So I'll do my best to like put up book covers and things so that you have something to look at. If I put a star rating, I'll tell you it, but also don't hold me to them because I'm just generally enthusiastic about things. And if I like a book, I like it. If I don't like a book, I don't like it. It's kind of hard for me to... I think 5 stars is generally like, I would definitely reread this. And then anything between like 3.5 and 4.5 is just like, I really liked it. 3 is, I'm not sure. And anything below that is like kind of, oh, sad. So I read God Killer by Hannah Canna, which I gave 4.5 stars out of 5. And the little note that I wrote is seamless disability and queer inclusion, great food descriptions, excited to read the sequel. Yeah, I think like the main character only has 1 leg or something, but there's no sense of, you know, she's like, there's no sort of like inspiration-y porn type thing. There's nothing clunky about the way that they talk about it. And the same for like queer people. It's just quite like, yeah, just seamless is the word that I wrote, and I really enjoyed it. It was super pacey, I got through it like really fast and I was kind of gutted to finish it. Yeah, I need to read the sequel. I don't know. I think it's just like it's been really expensive, so I haven't bought it. But yeah, then I read Poor Things after watching the film last quarter. So that's by Alistair Gray and it's from like the 80s or something. My little comment to myself is absolutely wild that this got made into a film. Really good but absolutely baffling choice for source material. I think I preferred the film. Guessing the alternative, so like the film I suppose sort of stops halfway or 2/3 of the way through the book, and then the rest of the book is like an alternate perspective on what happened from another character. And it was an interesting thing to read the book after watching the film. I generally try to read books before I watch the film or the TV series, so that I don't have the imagery from the film playing in my head, if that makes sense, so that I can like make my own images. I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah, it was really interesting that I was reading the book and like effectively got to the end of what I'd seen in the film and I was like, oh, I've still got like all of this book left. And it just sort of destroys the whole first part of the story. And it's like, you know, the sort of unreliable narrator thing. Yeah, really fascinating. Kind of can't believe it got made into a film. What a weird book. I recommend it. I know lots of people didn't like the film and they thought it was like problematic and stuff. I thought it was really good. If I'm wrong, please tell me. But yeah, what a strange book. Then I read The Night Raven by Sarah Painter, which was just like very fluffy and readable. I'll probably continue the series if I find the books in a way that I can like afford, because there's squillions of them. But I liked it. It was a sort of, was it like a whodunit kind of thing? Kind of crime detective-y thing, but with sort of magic-y stuff. But yeah, it was very fluffy. I mean, it was like murdery but fluffy, if that makes sense. And then I read Lilith by Nikki Marmory, which inevitably bleak because of the like what it's based on. But I thought it was really great, and it was kind of slow going. But again, you're talking about like thousands of years, and it was just like, I think it may well have like massively changed my perspective on a whole bunch of things, but just in this very like subtle, under the surface kind of way. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really well written, not so much in kind of like a literature kind of way, because I'm not really a judge of that kind of thing. But it really pulled you through the story, and it was really interesting and a new perspective for me, certainly, on all of these sorts of stories. And I'm a sucker for I suppose what's effectively become like its own little mini genre of like a feminist retelling of an old story, or like it's not a modern retelling in terms of like bringing it into a kind of contemporary setting, but it's a different perspective on an old story, and I thought it was very cool. Then I read The Turnglass by Gareth Rubin, which was just like a random kind of 99p ebook moment, and it was this like two stories that are kind of woven into one. And so I think if you had the physical book, you'd like turn it over and it would be another book, which I used to have with things like Sweet Valley High and like the Sleepover Club when I was a child. But the idea of that being like an adult kind of crime mystery novel thing was quite funny. It was a cool concept. It was well executed. It was eerie and atmospheric, but also kind of poignant. And then my notes say some old worldly phrasing was excessively euphemistic. So sometimes I didn't totally understand what was being said until later. So there's some like descriptions of crimes that happen, and they use presumably what would have been the language of the time, so kind of Victorian, mid to late Victorian language. And I like had to go back and reread it several times and then carry on for like loads more additional context before I realised what had actually happened and what actual crime had been committed. Maybe I'm just slow. I've just not come across that language before. And so that kind of made me sort of stumble my way through some of it, because I didn't know what the terrible thing was that had happened for, I don't know, like a few more chapters than I should have done, maybe. And then Bellman and Black by Diane Setterfield, which I started ages ago and then didn't stick with it, so I read like the first chapter of it or something. And I can't remember if like I hadn't read the back of the book or this isn't really mentioned in the back of the book. It is entirely about death, like to the point where it becomes about like the Victorian funeral industry, which is fascinating, just not what I thought the book was going to be about. It's also about like mills and stuff, which is kind of interesting, and fate, and yeah. I've read some of Diane Setterfield's books before. I find her writing is very rich in detail, but kind of to a point where I find it quite slow going. I read, it's like Once Upon a River or something, and again I thought that was really good, but it's just like, it can feel a bit wading through treacle at times, to sort of, and I really hate when a book makes my brain go, oh, get on with it. Because I feel like, no, I should be like enjoying this and kind of relaxing into it and just enjoying the use of language and stuff, but sometimes I do feel just like, oh my god, will you get to the point? And I felt a little bit like this. I like this more than I like the other one, I think. But yeah, sad and like content warnings for all the like grief and death and stuff. But I liked all the birds. There were lots of like corvids and rooks and stuff in it, and I enjoyed that. And then I read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which, so that's by V.E. Schwab, which I think was maybe like a TikTok darling for a while, or at least like I remember people talking about it a lot a couple of years ago. I think there's someone on YouTube where it's like their favourite book, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head who that is. It was so, I don't have any notes for this, like for any of the ones after this. I've just like written down the books that I've read. I liked it so much more than I thought I would. It was much pacier than I thought it would be. Like, it's quite similar to another book I've read called The Sudden Appearance of Hope, Disappearance of Hope, by Claire North, who's one of my favourite authors of like all time. And so it's the same concept, which is this person who is unrememberable. So like the moment they go out of your line of sight, you totally forget that they ever existed, kind of thing. And it's interesting that these two books have basically the same concept and they go in totally different directions with it. So that was really cool. And it's intrinsically quite a kind of grief injected concept. And I think it's something that strikes a lot of people as, well, it's just a really, really scary concept that, you know, it's not like horror or threat in like the general like thriller sense of it, but the idea of everyone you love forgetting you and anyone you ever meet forgetting you almost instantly and not ever being able to like leave a mark on the world. I think that's something that lots of people find, or would find like a really, really hideous concept. But it's really well managed. Like they go into the depth of it, but they also kind of keep it light enough because it's humanity, isn't it? You know, we manage really horrific shit all the time and manage to make light of it and manage to find a way through a lot of it. So yeah, it was way better than I thought it was going to be. But but I really liked it. And then speaking of Claire North, I read The House of Odysseus, which is the second in the Song of Penelope series, maybe, of which the third one's just come out. I liked it. I read Ithaca last year, which is the first one, and they're all, so if you're familiar with like the idea of like the Odyssey, it's who got like left behind when the Odyssey was happening. So it's like Odysseus's wife looking after the island that he was king of and stuff. I'm sorry that that's not a very good explanation. I do really recommend them. They're a little bit slow going, but I think that's probably just like the pace of life and the historical weight of it, and they're like the level of research that's gone into them. Like, she is sort of quite a scholar about these kind of things. The first one is narrated by Hera, the goddess of you know, like wives and mothers, and I mean just women in general, I suppose. And then the second one is narrated by Aphrodite, so the tone is quite different in both of them. But I think it's a really cool concept, and it lifts what is kind of quite a dark story, to have this sort of like slightly detached perspective narrating it. Very cool. And then yeah, I'm really in a like myths and legends retelling phase. That's not true. I'm always in the mood for these sorts of books. So then I read Inanna by Emily H. Wilson, which is bloody brilliant. It's like the first in the Gilgamesh series, which I can't remember if that's a duology or a trilogy, but that was really good. I really enjoyed it. It had lots of, well, there's like 3 main characters, and it's not a story I know particularly well. Gilgamesh himself is in the Tower of the Divine deck that I use all the time, and it's one of my favourite cards, so it was a real treat to get to know the story a bit better of him and his man, companion, roommate, etc. It was really great. I'm excited to read the next one as and when it becomes available to me. And now I'm reading, because I've been enjoying this so much, I'm reading Ariadne by Jennifer Saint, which is like one of the first, I think, like as the boom of these like myth retelling novels was happening, this was like one of the first really big ones. And she's like written a bunch of stuff since, which I will be interested to read because I am enjoying this. I had forgotten what happens to Ariadne, and I was reading before going to bed the other night, and like the big thing happened, and I was like, oh, I'm going to need to read some more chapters of this, aren't I? Because that's, oh god, a lot of women in well, I mean history, all of history and mythology and all of these things, and just yeah, but that's my own fault. I should have remembered what the story was. So yeah, so that's you up to date with what I've been reading. I hope this was kind of interesting. What have you been reading? Have you read any of these books? Do you have any opinions to share with me? Please do. If you enjoyed it, you could like the video. If you want to hear more about what I've been reading, what I've been doing, what I've been up to, you could watch my previous video, which is about the decks and other stuff that I've been doing for the last 3 months, or you could indeed subscribe. So, but yeah, no pressure. I hope you're taking really good care of yourself, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.